Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another program. Welcome to another broadcast. Welcome to another podcast. This is the Georgetown Tea House, and we are going to have another great conversation for you this evening. With me, I have Brother Tyrone, or Brother Randy just popped in,
Good
and
evening, everybody.
Good
and
evening, good
Brother
evening.
Cleon. How are you guys doing? I mean, Marcel is going to come on later and talk about how things have been and so on. I would like at this time to introduce the program. This evening we're looking at what does the Bible say about crime and punishment. All right, what does the Bible say about crime and punishment? And of course, as always at the tea house, we want to encourage you to share your own thoughts. We want you to explore, what's going on in your own mind and how you see things, right? And let's have a discussion. So I have a few questions I'm going to pose to you, you know, before we go. Now, the first sin or crime, if you want to call it, occurred in the Garden of Eden. All right? Now, this is what I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to bring it into modern day, into our time. And imagine yourself as a prosecutor. What would you have said to further the punishment of Adam and Eve? And if you were a defense attorney, what would you have said in defense of Adam and Eve? All right, to maybe lessen their punishment or maybe not get them punished at all. All right, so think about that. If you were prosecuting the case of Adam and Eve, what would you have said? And if you were a defense attorney, what would you have said? Now, please continue to like, share the broadcast. Tell them the Georgetown Tea House train is leaving shortly. We have Brother Augie who will be pulling out with the train. All right, so please tell a friend, grab your juice, grab your tea, whatever it is that you like drinking, even a glass of coconut water or plain old water. All right, Marcel is going to join you after Brother Augie takes us down with the train. All right, we're getting ready to move.
Let me go now. Come on, let's sing together. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. Everybody write it in Jesus' name. This train is our holy train. This train is our holy train. This train. Come on, let me sing now. This train is our holy train. This train is our holy train. Everybody write it in Jesus' name. This train is our holy train. This train. Let me go. Woo-hoo. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. Everybody write it in Jesus' name. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is our holy train. This train. Come on, sing along now. This train is our holy train. Everybody write it in Jesus' name. This train is our holy train. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. This train. This train is bound for glory. None but the righteous and the holy. This train is our holy train. This train. This train don't carry no
Okay, good night, everyone,
Good
and
evening.
welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so beautiful to be here.
Thank
I have
you. Good night.
good night. Of late, I've been missing Monday nights. I've been having to go on the job. But I'm so happy to be here. Trust me, guys. I miss you. I miss you all. I miss this
Mm.
program. I miss seeing all you
Yep.
beautiful people. Guys, I'm seeing some numbers. I want to know who is there watching us live. Just tell us good night. Wave to us in the chat. Tell us good night and tell us where you're joining us from. All right. We're so happy that you took the time to join us. All right. Tyrone, guys, Cleon, and Randy. I don't know if you wish Tyrone a happy birthday. He celebrated his birthday during the week, on the 4th. He had a birthday, you know. So I
Yes,
don't
yes.
know, huh?
I did send him some greetings. I didn't know if he read it,
If he saw
but
it.
I'm not
I
sure.
didn't see, I
I'm
didn't
not
see the
sure.
I didn't see the greetings. I didn't see them.
See, you gotta make sure you gotta listen here. Listen to this trick. You gotta tag when you put the send a greeting. You gotta put a name so it just pops up as soon as as
No,
soon as
well, I
they
think
come
I sent
on.
it directly to him. When
Hmm.
Facebook will give you the different birthday greetings and so on, and so you go and you
Right.
can put a personal message to that individual and so on. So
Yeah, but I think
yeah.
Okay.
I think what happened is that I changed my phone and I tried to get my old Facebook account, but I couldn't get it.
Oh,
Oh,
I
So
that's
see.
what
was
I
it
happened. So
so
see.
you
so
missed
so
out.
yeah, so I was able
I
to get
see.
it. I think it was yesterday or so on. I did some
Okay,
doing
okay.
things and I got it back. So I
Oh,
guess when I'll go through tonight and see all the messages.
yeah, you weren't
Okay.
forgetting, my brother. You were forgotten. You
No,
were
no, that's
remembered
okay.
and you were remembered and prayed for. Don't worry.
Thank
There
you.
you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
And then there is a young lady that has graced this program before. Trinacia Ezibom McKend. She's a great
Mhm.
singer and a woman of God. She loves the Lord and she loves ministering. And she celebrated her birthday, I think it's yesterday. So
Yesterday, okay.
Trinacia, I want to shout you out because we at the Tea House love you loads and really, it's always happy when you're here joining us. All right. So I hope you had a really, really grand time. I saw the cake and thing. I didn't get a piece because you're all the way in Barbados, but it's all right. I think when I visit next time, I am sure to get a piece. All right, we'll do something else that we can celebrate. So I hope you had a really good time. But guys, it's so good to see you. I'm not seeing my friends in the chat. I want to see you guys. I want to see you. Want to know where you're coming to us from. So, and I want you to join the conversation. Tonight we're talking about crime and punishment. And this sometimes you see things on the news and you hear about the punishment that was passed down to a particular person who would have committed some kind of crime or the other, and you would say yes, yes, good. We got these terms that we use sometimes, or sometimes based on what it was. You're saying, man, I'm really sorry for this person because I don't think it was justified. I think it was a little too harsh. Sometimes we get a little sympathetic and we say these things. But um, Andy has asked a few questions, and the story, of Eve, Adam and Eve, in terms of the punishment. What do you think, Tyrone?
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here again. Morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. When it comes to Adam and Eve, I'm not too sure if you would basically really want me to comment on Adam and Eve because I don't see that as a punishment.
Okay,
I see what God did to Adam and Eve as just pure love.
pure love. Okay,
Yes,
okay, because
just a matter of God loving them.
okay, I've heard that before. I've heard. I think I've heard you saying that before too, and maybe somebody else. But from a woman's perspective, I sometimes I sit there and I wonder, but my goodness, in terms of the childbearing,
Hmm.
you don't get this hardship in
Hmm.
childbearing, and
Hmm.
I'm thinking, having gone through childbearing, I'm thinking, my goodness, it has been so hard. I mean, it's laborious, and
Yeah.
I'm wondering, was it necessary? I mean, to give me that kind of punishment,
Can I
So
comment on that one,
yeah,
Marcel?
yeah.
The thing is that when if you look at what God did to Adam and Eve, okay, let me use the word punishment. Their punishment was basically in relation to what God created them to be, to
Yes.
do. Adam was created to till the ground. And so his punishment was related to what he was created to do.
Okay.
The thorns and the still come the soil shall bring forth. He was the one that would be providing. No, he had to sweat to provide.
Right. Right.
Eve, on the other hand, as people would say, she was created to nurture and to bear
Okay.
children. So her punishment had to be in that regard. And that is why when a man can't a reasonable man can't provide for his family, that's his greatest headache. That's his biggest headache. And so to say that one got more punishment than the other, it's in relation to what God created them to be, created them to do and to be. And so it was a balance something. It was a balance something. Adam had to sweat.
Yeah, but here now, I am nurturing you. You said I'm to nurture. I'm the
Mhm,
nurturer, right?
mhm,
And I believe that. And why? Because I'm a mother, and so
mhm,
I understand the whole thing of
mhm,
nurturing, right?
mhm,
But sometimes, because of the amount of pain that I would have endured,
mhm.
um, it knocked the whole nurturing aspect out of me because I no longer,
Mhm.
I had pain, I feel pain.
Yeah.
I have no time with this softer
Yes.
side because,
Yes. Yes.
oh, I feel pain, you gotta feel pain too. I
Yes.
mean,
I understand that, Marshall, but understand what I'm saying here. Adam was not made to bear children, so Adam could not have gotten that punishment.
right,
God could not have said to Adam, "In childbearing you shall have pain," because
right,
he wasn't made to bear children. If he
right,
was made to bear children, then he would have got his punishment in that way.
right,
God could not say to Eve, by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread, because Eve
right,
was made as the provider.
right.
So what God administered punishment, it was basically based on what He created them to be. And
Oh,
look at it. Think about it, Marcel. Who 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 is more emotionally, who will see more emotional pain watching their child going astray? Who's more likely to be more hurt watching the child going astray? The mother.
yes, but again, to that point, right? This, I mean, couldn't there have been some other punishment or no punishment at all? Because, and why?
Mhm,
Because this is the first time to do something. Because usually when like a mother, right? Usually a
mhm,
child does something the first time,
mhm,
you would drag them to the side because I would have dragged Sharon to the side and said,
mhm,
listen to me, I'm
mhm,
telling you this for your own good, right?
mhm,
You're not doing this anymore, whatever, right? And then, you pull his socks up like we
mhm,
say, right?
mhm,
But not so. So I'm gonna just on the forest go then, just
mhm.
hit you
There-
with
there-
something really hard.
there's a
Anyway,
lot more I can say, but I'll give you other
all
chances.
right,
There's a lot more I can say concerning
okay,
that. Because
all
I
right,
see it as, had God not done that. All
hmm,
right. Remember, God said, "The day you eat, you shall die."
right.
So the idea of death came into play. The eggs dying. If God did not make a way for a woman to discharge a dying egg, that would have been more serious for her on the inside. So it's all
Mhm.
a way of God showing His love, and God knows what He was doing.
All right, okay, Cleon, what's your take?
My take is they got what they deserve.
They
But
did.
she was too hardened. She didn't get enough punishment for me. Because of she I gotta be dealing with the hot heat and working hard, hard, hard. So even until now, I ain't even I trying to figure out in my heart how I could forgive Eve.
No, but if you no, but Cleon, if you're gonna go there, then I'm gonna have to say something, and I'm
Go
gonna have to
ahead,
say it
right?
on
You
national
go right there.
television
You go
because
right there.
because she didn't give. I mean, she made a suggestion, but you eat the darn thing.
No, you remember.
Anyway, hold
Let
on,
me,
hold on.
no, don't start there. It takes two to tango, as they say. The command was yes given to the husband, but it can't get half punishment. It don't have half punishment. So even if she alone had ate the fruit, mankind still had to suffer
But
because she was a part of Adam.
um,
He deciding to eat
Randy,
the fruit is a whole
Randy,
different level. And he and
tell
all to
me
get
that
some, we need some good
Randy,
licks.
tell me that you got a different take on this whole punishment because somehow, right? You got two
Um,
children, you watch your wife ball out and suffer from all kind of things because of this childbearing punishment that was meted out to her. Tell me you feel some
um,
kind of sympathy.
um, to sympathize might not be the word. I, I,
Okay, tell me
I,
you
I,
empathize.
well, probably. I disagree to an extent with what Cleon said, and agree with Tyrone to an extent also. Um, the part where we said that even if Eve alone had sinned, um, Adam would have suffered the same consequence for men. I read Pen of Inspiration says that God would have made Adam another helpmeet. You understand?
I heard that.
Had he had he held had he held faithful. I don't believe Eve's sin would have totally condemned the human race. All right.
Okay.
So that part
I
clear, we probably
disagree with
differ
you,
on.
and I will tell you why when you finish
Uh,
Um,
talking.
I can see where Tyrone is going. And I understand. I'm tempted to embrace that. Yes, Adam was made for a specific purpose. Eve also was made for a specific purpose. Her role and responsibilities were set out, so to speak, and so her punishment had to be in line
right.
in what she was destined to be. It's just that in achieving it, it became difficult and painful, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, because right, it became difficult and painful. It's just like you made reference to your son. If your son is doing something, you see the outcome, or God's original outcome is still the same, is still on track, just that it's the process is different. How God would have wanted things to be without sin, right? God still
Mm-hmm.
wanted things to be that way, but because of sin, the process of getting back
Mm-hmm.
to that.
And you didn't get a warning for it. You didn't get a because usually even in the work situations,
Hmm.
you get a warning
Hmm.
letter, right?
well
And
well
like I said
one of the
before, when you get a
questions.
good talking to, and then is when if you persist, then is when you get the cruel punishment. Anyway,
yeah but
hold your
yeah but the
thoughts,
thing about it. uh,
hold it, hold
mhm.
them. Stay tuned, guys. I'm depending on you in the chat to comment to give us your view because I know you have a view, right? So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Share the broadcast. Tell a friend that we're live and that we're talking about crime and punishment. All right. You want to know a few things. All right. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
All right. Good evening again. We're back with you, and this evening we're looking at crime and punishment. And what does the Bible say about crime and punishment? Cleon, in one sentence, based on your reading and your interpretation, uh, what in essence does the Bible say about crime and punishment as to how we should deal with a wrong that has been done and what comes after?
My recollection is that the punishment is used as a means of correction, not
Mm-hmm.
damnation. That is what I see the punishment being, one that helps you to bring you back in alignment with the truth that you got misconstrued by, the
Okay.
false information that you would have filtered yourself, allowed to infiltrate your mind, and then you had
Right.
to be, cleansed of all of these things. So I think punishment from that perspective helps one to know how to come back to the light and not stay in the dark
Okay. A means of correction.
as a means
Uh,
of correction.
you're right. Okay. Would you agree with that, Randy? Based on your
Yes,
own
but I
interpretation.
yes, but I would want to say that how should I put it? Um, before Christ, before the sacrifice, the crucifixion of Jesus, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, you do the crime, you serve the time. You know what I mean? To put it in a simple way, I believe now grace is much more extended to us in
Mm-hmm.
terms of crime and punishment, but not because grace is extended to us and forgiveness is extended to us, that we do not sometimes have to face the consequences. All right. Sometimes we face the consequences of our actions.
Mm-hmm.
Even though God's grace is extended to us. Um, you know what I mean? And forgiveness is offered to us. But sometimes we still have to deal with the consequence. For instance, um, the ultimate consequence of having to die. No,
Okay.
but then grace is extended to us that we may not have to die eternally. You understand?
Okay.
Because
Right.
right. So that's my in
All
essence,
right.
if you
Thank
get what I'm trying to say.
All right. Thank you. Um, Tyrone, one of our viewers, Abigail McDonald, she was asking, so whatever happened to forgiving 77 times?
I think for the last 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a 2 weeks presentation on forgiveness, and it's just amazing.
Mm,
That 70 times 7 forgiveness is not about number,
mm,
but it's about an attitude.
okay.
Christ was basically targeting the mindset, the attitude. And when we look at the process that Christ outlined for forgiveness,
Mm,
I think it will bring a whole different perspective to what forgiveness is. And one thing I can tell you, forgiveness is not um, removing the punishment or the consequences. It is
right.
not necessarily removing it, but it is basically bringing the offender to recognize the depth of their sin or the sinfulness of the action,
Mm,
and why the punishment or whatever it is would match or connect with the action that they would have done. And there's one thing that forgiveness is all about justice. If you want to know about forgiveness and what it is, just look at the cross.
mm,
At the cross, it was love, justice, forgiveness, and grace. All four met at the cross. Love, justice, forgiveness, and grace. The grace of God, the
mm.
forgiveness of men, the justice for sin, or the punishment for sin, and the love of God. All four met at the cross. So forgiveness has a justice part ingrained in it.
All right. Okay. Let me go back a little to my opening because we're going to come right back to the issue of forgiveness. Now, Cleon, you would have said, earlier, man, look, Eve and Adam, look where they got me, essentially.
Mhm.
They got you punishing, all right?
I don't know.
Let's for a minute bring it into our modern day sphere, our modern day means of thinking. Now, my first question to you, today we know, I know if I go into a Louis Vuitton store, break the glass, and grab, two Louis Vuitton bags, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I know and I understand the possible consequences of my action. Do you think that Adam and Eve were, let's say for the want of a better word, learned enough to fully comprehend the ramifications of their actions?
I will not make an assumption, but my position is that they knew to some extent, not probably in totality, what the ramifications were going to be,
Mm,
but for the fact that they were told not to, it simply means that they have some level of cognitive reasoning that they know that they should not. The consequences that comes after should not is what they decided that they wanted to see. Like
mm,
Marcel mentioned earlier, you tell the child, and I disagree with her when she said, oh, we determine some things as punishment and not punishment. I don't have to hit you to punish you. Eh? My words that I would have spoken to you could bring about emotional punishment on the child.
mm,
Let's not get into the psychosocial aspect of life.
Mm.
My thing is this: while they were told not to, they are like humans in today. You tell me don't do something, and I can prove a point to you that I could still do it.
mm.
Somebody needs to start drinking some tea.
Well, on that note, let's all take a cup and
If I may add to what Brother Cleon said,
go
I
ahead.
like the I like the way he put it over with Adam and Eve. But I want to look at it from a perspective of perfection. And when we talk about Adam and Eve being naked, um, and they were being clothed, in
Mm,
other words, the language suggests that they had no confusion in their mind. Everything was as clear as crystal to them.
okay.
So they were in a perfect environment. Their thoughts were clear. They had clarity of thought. There was no confusion. It was
Mm,
when Eve listened to the serpent, then that brought a whole different perspective now to Eve's mind. As
right.
I said to some students the other day, just last week, that what the serpent did, the serpent simply changed Eve's perspective of God. That's all he did, you know.
Mm,
So in changing her perspective of God, her perspective of the fruit changed. And now she began to see goodness in the fruit, whatever tree is that God says, no, don't touch it. And so with us today, the problem is once people begin to change our the perception of God in our minds,
mm.
everything becomes blurred. Everything becomes confused in our mind. And so we made decisions. So Adam and Eve, their minds, they were clear as crystal. They had no confusion in their mind.
Okay. All right.
If I should add to that, I like that very much, Tyrone. Um, Adam and Eve, who were created by God, who would have, um, who God would have given so many responsibilities to name the animals and all these things, who were given direct instructions from God, who knew who God was, who would have communicated with God several times before, and so on. Um, like Tyron was said has said they had a clear, perfect understanding in their mind. Because even when Eve ate the fruit and she sinned, when she came to her husband, I mean, he asked her, what have you done? He recognized right away. He knew that she had already sinned. You understand?
Mm,
So he could have only recognized that if he had the clear instruction in his mind You understand me? About you touching this fruit and eating this fruit and all of this sort. Um,
Right,
um,
right.
what would have happened? So he knew, he recognized it, right? So is and I like the point what Karen would have put it over well is that the devil um the devil changed her perspective about God's instruction, and she for a moment lost sight of what
Lost it.
God would have
Okay.
said and who God really is. Yeah.
All right. Let's welcome Sister Lurlin, lovely Lurlin, into the house. Sister Lurlin, good
It's been a
evening.
while.
I don't know if you've been listening to the gentleman, but I certainly would like your take in what from the Christian perspective would be considered the first bit of wrongdoing, the first crime, the first sin. Um, in your view, did the punishment meet the crime, or was it a little too excessive? She smiles.
Okay. I'm trying to. Are you hearing the feedback
Yeah, yeah.
from my
No, no,
side?
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. Um, I wasn't listening all along. I've now gained some access to internet. My internet was down for a while, so my
Okay,
apologies for being late.
that's all
Um,
right.
um, I thought about that, and I think the punishment met the crime. I think God, the God whom we serve, is a graceful, gracious God. And so I think he must have thought all of that through. In fact, he knew it was going to happen. So I think the alternative would have been to just exterminate them and shut things down and, let's start this over again. But I think because of his compassion and love for humanity, he,
Mm,
I think he gave another chance. And if if he knew before, the plan of salvation would have been in place beforehand, and so all he had to do was activate that plan. So I think given sending him out was kind of what you say when the police officers give you the word is not coming to me, not the punishment that you deserve, like you get a slap on the wrist then. Yes,
okay,
that's the term.
okay, I get
Yeah.
it. Okay, so
So
essentially it was like a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, cause I mean
Okay,
they messed up everything. I mean sometimes I get upset with them because they kind of turn everything upside down. We had a perfect plan. It's
right,
like
right,
in
right.
your life you have a perfect plan and then things happen and it just messes things up. It's in this similar vein.
All right. All our panelists, seem to agree essentially on that point. So
so
let's try to
how
be
is it done? How is
a
it
little creative here. Cleon, let's say you are a public defender, and you are asked to come up with a defense for these two folks. They're about to be cast away, cast out. But you're the public defender, and you have to defend them. Is there anything that you can say to to like put a pause on that punishment? What would you have been able to come up with, Clear?
Ladies and gentlemen, I present the argument of the defense for Adam and Eve at this time. Please note that they were given an instruction that they were not capable of carrying out. I believe the plaintiff would have set them up for failure. However, even though they were given an instruction, I do believe that they were set up for failure. That would be my honest defense for them at this time. And I trust that you guys think with your heart that because the plaintiff knew before time what was going to be the outcome based on the instruction that was given, I ask that you extend grace. I ask that you have some sort of empathy for my clients at this time. I rest my case.
All right. So, as as the prosecutor, Tyrone, what would have been your closing statement?
I don't think I can be that formal as Cleon, so I'll just get straight to it. Here's my thing from the prosecution perspective. Your client, Mr. Cleon, had everything at their disposal to carry out the instruction. They had every single thing. They had the power available. They had the courage available. All they had to do was to turn to the one who gave the instruction, and he would have given them the courage. But they refused to turn. And so they listened to the voice of the enemy above the voice of the one who created them. And so by that, because they refused to listen to the voice of the instructor.
Okay.
Objections?
Yes, I've heard your defense, and I will have to carry out the demand or the command or carry out the punishment.
You would have to follow the sentencing guidelines.
Yes, as a means of setting the precedence for others who may want to go down the same road.
Okay, let me see if I can strengthen Cleon's defense.
Go ahead.
God, you created Adam and Eve. You put them in this garden, this garden you say is a perfect place.
Mm-hmm.
You said to them, look, you can do anything but this tree in the middle of the garden. Don't touch it, don't eat about it. You didn't tell them about the war in heaven. You didn't tell them about Satan being cast out. You didn't tell them that he entered into the garden. I create too many defense, buddy. I create too many defense, bro.
Objection.
And remember, it's now what you can it's now what is true is where you can prove, right?
Objection.
So I'll be like, yeah, so I'll be like because look at it. Because so when she wandered at the tree, she was amazed that this serpent was talking to her. Did she know it was the devil? Even if she had an inclination that Satan was wrong, did she know that that was the devil? You know? I mean, after all, it was in the perfect garden. So how can you hold my client accountable for their actions?
Good.
Objection, Jonah.
Tyrone, you wanted to respond to that, right?
Yes, I want to respond to that. I hope I have enough time to respond to that. Randy, your statement is based on assumption that they didn't know. I would have walked with them. I would have talked with God would have walked with them. God would have talked with them. In fact, if you go to the scripture says God planted a tree. The scripture never said how long the tree took to grow, and he put man in the garden to till the ground. And he would have talked with them. He would have walked with them. How do I know that? Because when God came down as he used to, as he was accustomed to, they heard the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conversation would have been given the reason why they should not touch the tree, irrespective of who, what, where, or when. Because he communed with them. He married this couple.
But did he tell them about the devil?
Pardon me?
But
He would
did
have
he
told them
meant
all of that. He would have told them all of that. They would have known all of that.
cause to speculation?
That's not speculation. It is not speculation. It
Where is
is
this?
writing.
I'd like to know, please,
Now,
for my edification.
now
I'd
hear,
like to know
hear,
where.
hear, hear this now. Hear this now. Remember in the garden, there were two trees. The tree of life,
Mm.
side by side, with the tree of good and evil. You can eat of every tree, including the tree of life. The mere fact that they were heading to the tree of life after they made the mistake, they knew the powers of the tree of life. They knew the powers of the tree of life. And so to eat of the tree of life after the sin, it meant that they would have made sin eternal. So
All
when
right.
God put them out of the garden now, God was notice here, Brother Randy, God did not put them out of his kingdom. He did
That's
not
true.
put them out of the possibility of eternal life.
True.
What
Very
God did,
true.
I would
hold
like
on a
to
minute.
be suspicious here. He didn't put them out to church.
No, he didn't put them out of the kingdom. Notice what God did. What he did, God
No,
made,
hold on.
made
I need to take Laurel up on that.
okay.
Because it would seem that they were read out.
No, they weren't.
When
No,
they read out, Laurel?
No,
no, no,
More
they
like
weren't.
censored.
I mean, when you
They
guys get
weren't
read out,
censored.
it
they
can't.
weren't
I
censored
mean,
either.
they had to come into the garden, right?
Don't
They
worry
weren't.
with Tyrone.
They,
They weren't read out.
they weren't read out.
They were
They weren't
given
censored.
they were given another chance to serve as deaconess and head elder. They
Exactly.
were.
So now, may I continue
Yeah,
now?
but they had to stay out to the fancy church.
No. Hear what I'm saying, brother Arman. You hear what I'm saying? Notice what God said. Notice what the word said.
Mm.
God says they became one of us. Let's let them lest they eat of the tree of life and live forever.
Okay.
God, notice what God did. God covered them first. That's protection. He covered them first. Then he barred them from the garden. Why did he bar them? And I'm saying this here. God basically did not make sin eternal by putting them out.
All right. All
If
right.
if 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 they had
Let's move
only
on. Go
eaten
ahead.
from the if they had only eaten from the tree of life,
Mm.
sin would have had the power to be eternal.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. We'll have another court scene another time. All right. I think this is actually a great way to to really explore some issues and really set us thinking. Set us really not just reading, but really thinking and exploring. What should have been, what could be, etc. Cleon, when we look at the Old Testament, you know, some of those verses in Leviticus, yeah, in Exodus, and we look at the New Testament, especially through Christ's Christ's teachings, and let me find that verse. When Christ says, um, "Ye have heard it that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him, and there also." Now, when you look at what was said in the Old Testament, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, etc., versus what Christ was trying to teach us clear on, um, do you see some kind of discord between the way God is portrayed in the Old Testament as as against how he's portrayed in the New Testament?
I will hold the position and say no, because it's like as humans continue to evolve and continue to grow, the manner that you would have dealt with things in 1965, it's not the same way that you're dealing with things in the 21st century.
Mhm.
So I do believe that for the period of being under the law would have required these things. Christ came and he demonstrated grace even more. I do believe that sometimes, not that sometimes rather, but what Christ was trying to help us to understand is that we should be truly long suffering with each other, truly
Mhm.
learning to empathize with the other person, truly learning to go the extra mile with the other person. And I do believe that could have been seen in a different context, even in the Garden of Eden situation, because they didn't get killed one time, but they were given another option of being able to survive and to continue to thrive and to continue to make life at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Lurlin, when you look at the story of the flood and the punishment that was meted out, now there would have been children at that time, and the children would have been part of those being punished. Um, when you look at that story, the story of the flood, and the fact that the people were made to pay for their wickedness, outside of Noah and his family, what does that tell you about the way um punishment is meted out by God? What does it tell you?
I'm thinking that that wasn't really punishment, that was consequence. Because the people had an opportunity to go into the ark and they denied themselves the opportunity by choosing not to. And
Mm,
so what came after was as a result of their decision. And they were told that this is going to happen. And oftentimes, because we have never experienced something, we kind of, it takes a while before we actually believe that it is or it can happen to us. No, this can't happen to me. Never happened to me.
mm,
Because we've not experienced it. So I don't think it was a punishment. I think it was a consequence as a result of their actions because they were told that the rain was going to come. So I don't see it as punishment. And
don't
it
see it
and
as
to me
punishment.
it doesn't um, blur my view of who God is. This particular story, but my son has asked, said that God is a bad God because he killed Pharaoh's son, and I am
Mhm.
there trying to explain to him,
so, Ty-
trying
so,
to
so, Ty- so,
defend
so
God's
Tyrone
action.
is little Liam incorrect when I mean he's looking at this thing through a child's eye,
Yeah.
and his mom, lovely Laurelyn, would have provided certain
Mhm.
instructions to him, and his mom would have been guiding him as to what is right or wrong. And when he hears this story, he says, "But wait, God
This
bad to do
conflict.
this."
Mhm.
Yeah.
How do you see that, Brother Tyrone? And is little Liam incorrect?
I would say he is not alone in that manner. A lot of Christians struggle to explain that side of God. The atheists and those who the agnostics, they have that problem with God. They
Mm,
can envision a God of love with doing that. But there are many perspectives from which you can look at it. One is there's a statement that the Bible normally has whenever there's punishment, especially death. And the statement is this: this is how you will put sin out of Israel. Remember, the first command says, if you eat, you shall die.
mm,
Sin deserves death. Sin deserves death. And if you look at the flood, there's some statements that God made before he sent the flood. And I recognize that God did not sent a warning. It wasn't a warning message God sent with Noah. It was a message of condemnation because it says his spirit will not always strive with men, meaning he was always pleading with them to change their ways. And even when they refused to change their ways, God said, look, it grieved me
Mm.
that man has come to this position that they will not accept, they will reject. And if I can make it relatable in today's context, if we have somebody in society who's a menace to society, he has been spoken to many times, he
Right.
has gone for a whole lot of stuff many times, he has gone to rehabilitation center many times, and they see, and the person would have made up their mind that this is the life they want. Society would say, you know what? Whatever happens to him happens to him because he had a chance. So why do we see God differently when God does that? And I think humanity is basically very hypocritical because in our own sphere, we do the same thing on a natural level. In that
Mm.
we see somebody going on a bad way, a bad road, we talk to them, we speak them, we try everything possible with them, but they still make up their mind that they're going to go down in this path. And then we say, you know what? Allow them to go. Whatever happens, happens to them. And when it happens to them now, we see, you know what? They look for it. But when it comes to God who does it, we have a problem with God doing it. And so, from a human perspective, you're being hypocritical. Another perspective with this whole.
Before you go on, I just want to give Cleon a chance to speak. He has to leave shortly.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Cleon, I want you to quickly respond to an innocent child looking at the story and coming to their conclusion. Um, would one say outrightly that that child is wrong? What's your take?
Based on the level of reasoning, the child would not be wrong to say such. However, we can, as adults, bring about clarity to the child's mind
Mm.
as he or she continues to grow and develop. There are things that you will think as a child when you're as a child, and we can't expect you to think as an adult. So, therefore, when the child is of age of um, much more mature and cognitive reasoning, the child is better able to understand. Oh my goodness, I was 5 years old. You remember when I asked you, I said God was a bad person. Oh, look how children were kind of funny when. But then we have to. I would say to parents, and I always say to them, let the child be the child. It doesn't matter because you are a religious person and the child would say, oh, God is a bad person. Some persons may want to say, oh, no, you should not say God is a bad person. That is how the child understands the story based
Mm.
on what he or she is seeing. But like I said before, you will only be able to reason on the level of the child until he or she comes to that age of maturity and understanding that indeed God is really bad. Bad in the sense that if you mess with him, he'll deal with you.
Okay.
I,
Thank you.
can I
Go
can
ahead.
I want to agree with Leon because even as a parent, we want to kind of draw the analogy. My children, at one point, my daughter used to say, if I let's say she does something that was wrong, and soon after I would say, I love you, or give her a hug or whatever, she would be like, um, why are you telling me that you love me and I just did something bad? And I would
Mm.
have to explain to her that it doesn't matter what you would have done, my love for you doesn't change. And my son does the same thing in terms of asking, do you still love me, mommy? Even though he just ran riot around the house. And he would ask me that, and I would say, yes. And then he would say, oh, so how much do you love me?
Mm.
So the same thing with God. We want to we want to see God as a loving God, um, but we also have to see God as a just God, a God who doesn't necessarily want to inflict pain or cause pain to anyone, but it's because of our choices and our consequences. And in the instance of Pharaoh, I mean, I tried to explain it to him in the best way I could in terms
Mm.
of the many warnings Pharaoh got. Let my people go, let my people go. And Pharaoh just refused. And so it wasn't as a result of God being so terrible. It was as a result of Pharaoh's um, hardness choices that he made, which we was given to us from the inception. So I think as a as and even as babies in Christ, um, we sometimes have this thwarted view of who God is. And I like what Cleon said, that we have to relate with people on that level. We
Mm.
tend, when people come in to the church, we want to transform their lives. We don't allow God to do it. We judge based on where we are and not where the person is, and that kind of thing. And Tyrone's point comes in terms of we follow I think is Matthew 18. I could be wrong, where we go through all the steps of trying to redeem somebody, but then nothing that you try works, and so you have to let that person go for them to not that you want them to be damned, but it's out of your hands now. So in many cases, I believe for God, it was out of his hands. I mean, God is powerful and he could turn situations
Mm.
around, but he can't do it without us. And to me, that's the big one of the big messages. God cannot turn situations, turn Pharaoh's hearts, make Pharaoh more compassionate, because God is so powerful and he wills Pharaoh. He doesn't do that with us. We have to want it. And
Right.
so we have to look at God from that perspective, that he
So
wants us
so
to be this way, but we have to want it too, you
so
know?
my question would be, um, did God kill Pharaoh's son? Um, Pharaoh's son died at the word of his mouth. Um, his choosing, so to speak, if I should use those words. I believe God just allow um death to befall his son rather than we can say God killing his son, because remember, Pharaoh would have said to Moses, all the firstborn and of Israel gonna die and all of these things. You know what I mean? God made provision with them for to put the blood over the doorstep and so on. But it was really at Pharaoh's command. So did God really kill his son? You know, I mean, in trying to explain things to kids, we need to psychoanalyze them to an extent. All right. Um, and we need to be careful in what we tell them. You see, we're accustomed to telling them, oh, killing is bad. So everything that or whoever that kills somebody, they associated with being bad. So even God, they will do that, right? But I believe is and in their mind, especially if they're looking at the picture of the story of Pharaoh and Moses and so on, if they look at the picture that they will usually show at Easter time and so on, that's what the picture will paint to them. That God actually killed his son, or God actually did this, right? Which truly sometimes whatever happened to us is because of our choosing. You understand me? And like you rightly said, Laurelin, God, and what Tyrone would have said, God really pursues us. God really goes after us and pleads with us and literally, um, I mean, he does all that is possible, right, within the realm of power of choice to get us to choose him rather than to suffer the consequences of our actions. And if we don't, well, then he just allows you to suffer what the consequences is, you know what I mean, or the consequences are. So in that particular story to explain it to my child, I would put a spin on it to say, man, it's not that really God killed Pharaoh's son, but God would have given Pharaoh and his son every opportunity to live on all of these things. And because of Pharaoh's choosing, God allow certain things to happen even to his son. So we even in kids today as teachers, you would know we're all teachers here that you really need to psychoanalyze our young people and really know how to answer them and answers to give to them because they can really take some of the things that we say out of context and run with it. And then it's a hell of a task to basically pull them back, you know. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
want to,
brother Tyrone.
sorry.
I'm thinking,
Before you
yeah,
go, lovely Larry,
I really want to
Tyrone,
know what is Tyrone
as
take about on that
as
question
a
that I
teacher,
asked.
as a teacher, you listen to all this, um, and Randy's play on words as to whether you should actually use the word kill or whether we should say God allow this thing to happen. What's your take? How should we communicate some of these things to kids?
The story is very plain. God slay all the firstborn. There is no means of words there. Who killed who? God said, if you go, I God will slay your firstborn.
Okay.
And God did it. So the problem, the thing is now, what children will ask, or people ask, was God right in doing it? Was God just in doing it? And if you look at the story from the inception, what was Pharaoh doing to these innocent people? He was basically suppressing them. They had them in slavery. He was torturing them physically, mentally, and he was just happy doing it. And so God said to him, look, these are my people. Set them free. Let them go, that they may serve me. And the first question Pharaoh asked was, who is this God that I should let these people go? So, in other words, he tried to prove to the judge that he's bigger than the law of the country. And so, in doing that, he would have faced the punishment. God gave him 10 chances. So, you know what?
Hmm.
This is the thing. In fact, eight. Because by the time they got to the eighth plague, Pharaoh said to Moses, don't come back in my face. Don't come back to this office again to tell me anything about leaving. And God said to Moses, okay, you don't need to go back. This is what will happen. And look at it. If you go to Kevin in that story, even to Pharaoh's men said to Pharaoh, can't you see your decision is causing the country havoc? Can't you see your decision is sending the country down the drain? His men told him that. But yet still, he was so hard-hearted and so full of pride that he did not see what he was doing to his own countrymen and his own country. And so God, being a God who doesn't change, who has no variation, simply carried out what Pharaoh requested from his action.
Okay. Thank you, brother Tyrone. Lorlin, you wanted to add something earlier.
I was just gonna kind of say that it just goes to show that um, as Christians, as people, we have to be careful about our choices because our children, what our children can reap what we sow, you know, and in lifetime. So I think in Pharaoh's instance, and even when we talked about the in Noah's time, children would have suffered. I think they suffered because of their parents, you know. So I think all of this has a bigger meaning in that respect, and in so many other ways about how we see God, how we see punishment, I saw someone mentioned about forgiving 70 times 7. Um, I'm still yet to do further in-depth studies on the 70 times 7 and what that actually means. You know, but but it is how we have to see God as a compassionate God. And we also have to see him as a just God. We can't, and even when we, as humans, as Tyron mentioned, it would be hypocritical of us to see God differently. Because in our humanness, if someone rapes our child or does something terrible to our children, we want them to be punished. We want them to pay the consequence of their actions. I mean, I would. I don't know about the rest, but I would, and I would probably do something to help them to pay. Um, so we have to also see God in that way. And when we talk about, sometimes we talk about, don't touch the Lord's anointed, and it really does it has some meaning on some level, because when you belong to somebody, when you're your daddy's child, your mother's child, and you mess with your mommy or daddy's child, you know what you're getting. And that's the same thing with God. And I've seen that experience in my life. I mean, everybody, all of y'all could say y'all are God's children, but I know I'm his favorite. We could debate that. But when I have seen him represent me in major ways, so in the same way, we want God to represent us and protect us. In the same way, when we look at the Old Testament, it's like a protective shield he was building up over time. That's how I see it. We could say he was eliminating the badness that rose up, and it still continues. But I think I used to see God as this: how can he kill all these people? And even in my history class, I asked about examples of genocide, and the children mentioned acts of God as
Mm.
genocide. And so I had to explain now what genocide is, and the context and the negative connotation that comes along. So it's a kind of ticklish topic.
Right, right. Well, we're going to close off on that ticklish topic. We're going to take a short break. And when Marcel comes back to close off, I want to touch on what you started talking about, Lurlin. The whole issue of kids paying, having to pay for the sins of their father. Because if we look at it literally, um, kids paying for the sins of their parents, and given that we all will fall short, all right, we all will sin. That is a cycle that will go on perpetually. It will just keep. So, is it right? Is it right for kids to suffer for the sins of their parents? We're going to close off with that question. Marcia will be back with you shortly.
I want to thank all our viewers just sitting back in the chat and listening to us and making comments. Thank you so much for putting your 2 cents in. I was sitting behind and I was still thinking before I tackle the last question about the children. I've never heard Tyrone enough explanation about 7 times 7. I mean, I've been in the church for so long, And trust me, I've never heard anything other than it being, about forgiveness and forgiving your neighbor 7 times 7, or forgiving a spouse, or whatever the situation is about forgiveness, being something else. So I think we got to really delve into that, one Monday night. All right. Um, another thing that I thought about the about Pharaoh and his, putting the plague on, one plague after another. But God is all knowing, and He knew. I mean, people are going to argue. God is all knowing, and so He knew that Pharaoh. It didn't matter what he threw at him. He knew that he was not going to turn. So were the plagues for? I mean, to show the people, um, in that nation, the Egyptians, that look okay. Check me out. I'm going to keep giving him chances and he's not going to take it, because God knew he wasn't going to. It didn't matter how many plagues, because it could go to 15, you know.
God does nothing for himself to know. It's
Mm,
always for human beings to know. Who would have known the nature of Pharaoh's heart had God wiped Pharaoh out from the very first plague?
mm,
From a teacher's perspective, and this is what I normally say, the teacher knowing the word
mm,
goes to the class. It's not for the teacher to know again, but it's for
mm,
the teacher to make students aware or become aware of the knowledge that they need to have
mm.
about a particular concept
Right,
or a topic. And so the teacher would do whatever they need to do in terms of strategy and so on
right,
to bring the students awareness of the knowledge, the concept that they need to acquire.
right.
Likewise, it is never forgotten. Again, you see, when you read the Bible, there are certain statements that I zero in on. And one such statement is this: that you may know. There's always that statement in the Bible that you may know. Let's take, for
Mm,
example, Hezekiah. Hezekiah was asked, Hezekiah was told by Isaiah, you will die just now. Put your house in order.
mm,
Hezekiah asked for how many more years? Asked God to extend that. God gave him 15 more years.
mm,
What Hezekiah did? Hezekiah simply basically show off his properties, whatever it is. And you know the scripture says, the story says, this is what God says. These things happen so that you will know. In other words, to reveal what's in your heart.
mm,
So that other people will know who you really are. What's your nature? It's
mm,
not for God to know, you know. God already knew.
mm.
But God just wants people to know so that when God makes a decision, we can say God is just.
Okay.
God
All
is right.
okay. So, Lurlin, Charlie, good night, Charlie, and thanks for joining us tonight. Charlie's one of my work colleagues. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's good having you. Charlie said it's not right for kids to suffer. All right. Because we're as parents, man, we see children really suffering when they're falling and get a bruise on the knee and thing. We know the ball out, like give them the kingdom will come today,
Mhm.
but especially when they see blood and stuff, um, and then to watch um, children. I mean, because the parents, yes, parents did the evil and thing.
Mhm.
But you look at the child and you're thinking, but man, the child is 5. Child begin to live yet, and is it that God know that there gonna be that sin in the child's heart, that when the child gets older, it's gonna happen, and what happened to the fact that even if they're sinful now, that they can turn in terms of forgiveness and the like.
Um, can I go on the flip side, Marcel?
Yeah, you
Because
can.
I've heard this thing time and time again,
Yeah.
but I've not heard one person mention or reference this story in the Bible. You remember when God sent 12 spies
Hmm.
to spy the land?
Yeah, yeah.
10 came back with a negative report.
Hmm.
And God said this entire generation will not go into the promised land. Do you know that God said, except for the children who do not know right from left,
Hmm.
did those children deserve to go into the promised land? So we have to put this thing on a balance. So people also often focus on the negative side that children suffer from the parents' sin, but the sin of the parent in that promised land there in the wilderness, God said, "I am not going to punish the children for your mistakes, for your error.
Hmm.
These children who do not know the right hand from the left, who can determine right from wrong, I am going to take them to the promised land, but you
So
are
you
going to just stay out."
so you're saying that that he knew the hearts of the children.
God knows everything. God knows everything. And
Mhm.
I believe that children will be saved outside the parents.
Mhm.
They don't know, they cannot make a decision as to right and wrong. So let's look at this thing from a balanced perspective.
All right,
And not
lovely,
I'm not going
Larlin.
from the other perspective of kids stuff, parents and all the rest of it.
If I
Larlin, you're
should, let me.
mumbling. Randy, before you go, Larlin, put your mic on. You're mumbling.
No, I was just saying, of course, Tyrone, children are going to be saved outside of their parents. Um, Based on what you just said, I think um, that part of what Tyrone said is crucial. Um, but I think that the other part needs to be more. I will want to say I'm gonna put my neck out there, more magnified because it's more in front of us. It's what we deal with. Um, and so even though they will be saved eventually, when we make the decisions now, they still have to live through whatever, you know. So until they are saved, and sometimes I have seen this that sometimes we have to kind of analyze and assess whether the decision that you make or the things that we do is it based on God, what God directs us to do, or based on what we decide for ourselves or what others say that we should do, and so we tend to make the draw the conclusion of right and wrong based on that. So then we immediately assign a punishment or a direction in which these children's lives are going to go. So this woman, she is a prostitute. She bring all kind of men into this house and blah blah blah. And we immediately assign prostitution to the children. This is all they're seeing, and so this is what's going to happen. Me, I tell my students differently. You could grow up in hell. You don't have to live in hell or be like what is in hell. You
Mhm.
could make that choice for yourself, um, and and eventually some of them do, and some of them, because of um, this is more psychological, because of
Depression.
nurture and the nature of man, even um, you they end up in the same path of their parents.
The
But
weakness.
right, so I think sometimes we have to hold off on the predictions too early. In fact, we shouldn't even be predicting on people's children.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even be predicting on people's children because we ain't God, you
We,
know?
we, we don't know anything at all. I
Right,
mean, we don't even know what's
right,
happening in the next minute.
right. We
Yes.
could bruise our knees for hours because we want ours to be a certain way, and we could bruise our knees for other people's own. And we should be trying to make ours kingdom children instead of, you know,
Mhm.
saying, well, Susie daughter, she gonna she she can go down by
She
the
gonna count to
cathedral.
nothing. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this thing
Mm-hmm.
because this is and all of that. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Randy.
Um, so many things running through my mind, and I too at one point struggled with the thought of an innocent baby being lost because of the parent or the parents' sinful nature, so to speak, right, or life. Um, in that, when I tried to understand it, my mind came up with um, whenever God gave us children, um, He gave us basically a responsibility is that we are to be good stewards, not just with money and possessions and whatever, but even with the kids that we have. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it starts with us. Lauren touched on a point. Um, Nurture and training um, starts even from conception. You know, so that would probably lend some support to why um, a baby might suffer because of the parents' lifestyle, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But then again, Tyron had an interesting twist to it that one should also consider. And but then it's only Saturday I listened. I went through back the story again with Noah and the ark, and it was interesting to know that not one of the not a child or a baby was saved. Was me went into the ark, and that was because of I want to believe is because of the parents doing. That child could not have left the parent and said he going in the ark or he going with Noah.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? You're still under the parents' control, and we're talking about little children here. It's interesting
Mm-hmm.
that not a little child was saved in the ark. You know. So
I'm gonna ask this question. Like, it's a crazy question. I know it's a crazy question, but in the
mhm,
same way God directed Noah,
mhm,
to bring in
mhm.
the animals,
Yeah, true.
God knowing the hearts of these children that they're pure, they're
Mhm.
babies, they're children, they don't know, they gotta go with the directive of the parents, right?
My yeah,
Um,
exactly.
could he
My
not have
answer to
insisted that that the
they
children go
come into the ark.
that they go without them? This is just a
I
crazy question, a
my
crazy
my my
reasoning. I know,
Yeah,
but I thought.
knowing the hearts of the children doesn't necessarily mean that they will go into the ark because again they have the earthly parent ready to say you got to stick by my side or you going with a crazy man. No, because everybody thought no was a crazy
Mm,
man. He built a big boat and never see so much water before who can float this boat. And of course, I not gonna see me 2 year old or 3 year old going behind Noah and say that
and allow him to.
you're allowed to
Mm,
go and do what you want. You know what I'm saying? But the thing about it, my simple answer to that is that I am not going to try and debate it much. Maybe I need to put some more in depth study into it. But what I will say is that whatever God does, it's justified. You know, whatever God choose to do, whoever God um, declared fit for the kingdom of God would have been justified. Whoever God declare shall not be a part, also he would stand justified in his decisions.
okay.
You know?
All right,
So
Tyron. Yes, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, I can close
Okay.
on that
So,
basically. That's my
all
position.
right.
Um,
Um, Tyrone, I want you to close off. We talked about tonight for our viewers who are here. We thank you for sharing time with us, spending time with us, for sharing your thoughts with us. We really love and appreciate you. We want to see you back every Monday if possible, to share your thoughts on different topics. We ask a lot of questions that people have been asking us all during the week, a month ago, a year ago, and they want to hear our views on it. They want to hear what the Word of God says on it. They got some, things that they don't quite understand, and sometimes they question. I question sometimes because sometimes I don't even understand it. It's only because of faith, my faith in the person I consider to be God. And like I said, so for me, I see God in nature. I see God every day in nature, and for me, that's my comfort. So I know how hard it is sometimes to answer some of these questions, and you read something you just don't even understand it, right? And everybody got a different take on it.
Mm.
Crime and punishment. Sometimes the crimes, because even in our limited human understanding, the punishment that we give to a particular crime, you know, is not justified. Sometimes we think it's just. Sometimes we see it as being the right decision. But Tyrone, I want you to close off, and we touch on the Eve issue
Yeah.
about for punishment and the things with the children and stuff. But close us off
Yeah.
and give our friends and family some food for thought for the
I want to
week.
close off with 3 points. 3 points quickly. One, we speak from a position of imagination and limitation. God acts from a position of knowledge,
Okay.
of knowing what He wants to accomplish,
Yeah.
what His purpose is. So in every situation, it's about what God wants to accomplish. That's one. The second thing is, when it comes to punishment, God never punishes us with what we deserve.
Hmm.
There's a text like that in the book of Nehemiah. It says God doesn't punish us according to our iniquity. David had that same testimony. So whatever punishment we receive on this earth, we need to tell ourselves it is still God's grace
Wow.
because we deserve wiping out. And the other thing I understood was when I read the book of Numbers, I studied the book of Numbers. I recognize that the enemy, and we have to look at it from who the battle is based against. The enemy pushes or does things in an effort to make God change his plan. Why am I saying that? In the book of Numbers, when the children of Israel, when the 602,000 men rejected, refused to obey God, and God said He's going to wipe them out immediately.
Hmm.
Moses' prayer was, God, you know, if you do this, what the other nations will say.
Hmm.
They will say that you are not able to bring these people in the promised land as you
Wow.
promised. And so it's all about God's name. So the enemy wants God to basically go against his word. So he's also doing stuff. He's also
Hmm.
killing. He's also causing people's heart to be wicked. He's also whatever doing whatever it is with the intention to get God to go against his word. In other words, for God to abort his plan.
Hmm.
If you look on the cross, when the crucified, those who crucified Christ, said to Christ, come down, that was the devil's plan. He knew that once Christ came down, the plan of salvation would have been dead and buried.
Hmm.
And so, if we understand all these sufferings from that perspective, then it gives us an input as to basically how God operates. And I want to mention this
Hmm.
story, reference quickly, Marcel. We may think that God doesn't care for the children. Look at the story of Abraham and Agar. When Abraham put Agar out with just a bottle of water and a bread, and Agar put her son one side and sat and wept and prayed. You know the response came back. The response that came back was this: I have heard the cries of the child.
Hmm.
God never said he heard the cries of Agar, you know. He
Okay.
heard
The
the
child.
cries of the child. So God knows what he's going to do with children. And so he hears the cries of children that we can't hear, that
Okay.
we don't know about. And so it's all about knowing who God is and how God operates. And whatever God does, it's out of a perspective of love. And I finally want to comment on something that was said earlier. The God of the Old Testament is the same God of the New Testament.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
people of the Old Testament, they had direct revelation of God. They saw things. They saw clouds. They saw physically, they saw things. We today, we deal with perception on a different scale. The second thing I want to point out is this. When Christ died, sin, sin calls for the death on the cross. It took death to basically deal with sin. That's what God was saying in the Old Testament. So when Christ died on the cross, all that death punishment, Christ paid it on the cross. And so post-cross now, we don't need to go through all that death punishment and all the rest of it. In the Old Testament, it was grace also. It was grace also. And so the whole idea of crime and punishment is that we want us to understand that God does not punish us the way we deserve. He is full of mercy, he is full of grace, and he is full of truth. And we have to be thankful for God who is merciful. And why not connect with God and let God tell us exactly what's happening when we understand God from it's a difficult to wrap your mind around. It's very difficult to wrap your mind around children suffering. And I said to somebody the other day, I believe God has given us enough food for everybody to be fed. God has given us enough love in our hearts for everybody to be loved. But guess what? What we see in the world is based on man's selfishness and greed. That is why children are starving. That is why children are being murdered, because of man's heart, the condition of man's heart. And the truth is, when God put Adam and Eve out of the garden, sin lost its potential to be eternal. And that is hope, because this condition will not last forever. It can't be eternal.
Okay, thank you so much, beautiful people. Lurleen, it was so good to have another female here. We had our brothers here all the time. I love my brother, but it's so good to see
The
you.
hibiscus among the roses.
So good to see you, Laurel. Thank you so much, Randy. Cleon had to run. Thank you so much, my brother Tyron. It's always so great to have you. I love you loads. Thank you to all our viewers. Don't forget, you can still share the broadcast. Tell a friend you heard something interesting, and get their view on it. All right, and let us continue to learn from each other, and let us continue to live lives that is pleasing in God's sight. All right, we love you all, and be looking forward to seeing you next Monday. All right, come early. Bring a friend. Don't forget, bring a friend, and don't forget to walk with your tea and then tell us what you're drinking. All right. Love you loads, and do have a wonderful night. And
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. This was so.
Examine any profound event in the Bible or in the history of Christianity, and one is sure to recognize the consistently pivotal role of conversational interactions. We see this at play in Genesis, the first book, where through a series of conversations we witness the fall of our species and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The conversation between God and man, the conversation between man and woman, the conversation between the woman and the devil, and so on. At the Georgetown Tea House, we know the great importance and pivotal role that conversations often play in our lives on this earth. And thus, we will seek to engage in the types of conversations that are insightful, stimulating, and thought-provoking. And yes, occasionally, a trifle boring. Our hope is that with each visit to the tea house, we can become better aware of who we are, of our relationship with God, and where we stand with each other and the rest of humankind. And yes, through it all, there will be music. For music, it had been written, is the food of love, and God is love.